Grenades at Windmills Podcast.
Epigraph. Before they were 5, they were 3. Before they were the hand of God, they were the Godhead, and chaos rode in their wake. Chapter 1. Godwin Thomas, July 4, 1890. It wasn't the death that upset the bar patrons, so much as the near-death experience. Godwin Thomas's final gift to Tuesday's Hamburgers, the third of 4 corporations the Godhead had been sent to kill, had caused a nasty ringing in the ears of everyone in the room. There were also quite a few powder burns. Little bits of flesh from the explosion were everywhere, in the cheap imported Belgian player piano, in the prostitute's overly large ostrich feather hat, in the beer nuts in the authentic Cherokee bowl, and in the beer. But no one died. Tuesday's Hamburgers was a hodgepodge of different men, almost all likely proxies rather than board members. Both eyes were discolored, the left brown, the right blue. One of its hands was white, the other Asian. It hissed at Godwin, needle-sharp teeth all the better to draw blood with, and it charged, faster than anything natural should move. The quiet in the saloon became the silence of the grave. One didn't kill corporations. They couldn't be killed, at least not practically. They could snuff a fire fast enough, and they'd just shadow into the ground when sunlight became a problem. So Godwin picked a more permanent solution, and simply blew Tuesday's Hamburgers to pieces. Godwin looked at the remaining corporation he had come to collect the bounty on. It scrambled at the walls as if it could somehow claw through them. "This is new," Godwin said matter-of-factly as he reloaded. "Shiny new. Hasn't been outlawed by the board yet. Just brought over from Sweden." This was a bit of a challenge, since his artificial right arm, which matched his left leg, didn't have the best manual dexterity in the hand motors. He managed. He always did. Medley's handlebar mustache wax, ink, tried to dive into the adobe side of the wall. The earth wasn't embracing him right now. Ghost had blessed it. It was quite well warded against minions of death. "Let me go," it hissed, and wrapped its arms around a bar patron. Godwin looked at the hostage, a young man with a bright future ahead of him, probably on his way to some mining town. Godwin took his cigar clipper and cut the dynamite in half. People started sweating. Godwin put the smaller load in the crossbow, aimed, and lit the fuse. The young man screamed and flailed. Handlebar let the kid go and grabbed the dynamite with supernaturally fast reflexes, throwing it back at Godwin. Patrons scattered in all directions, while Godwin simply rolled to the side. All hell broke loose. Godwin tried to get a clear shot at the last corp, but there was too much chaos. Someone hit him in the back of the head with a chair. He punched that bastard and ducked a table leg from a 10-gallon hat-wearing Texican with a violet serape. By now the saloon had filled with smoke. The bleeding ears and stunned looks from the mortal patrons gave way to rage as they all reached instinctively for the firearms that weren't there. No one carried guns in no name. That's the way the town rolled, and one reason why it was considered a safe haven in the windswept steppes of Wyoming. But a bar fight was a bar fight. People made do with what they had. They might be angry with Godwin, but they weren't exactly loyal to each other. The large, grunting Texican reached for a table and broke it apart, tearing off 2 of its legs, while his 2 smaller compatriots grabbed the remaining 2. The piano player, splendorous in his dapper gold lame suit imported from the East, cringed and picked up the piano bench in self-defense. Half a dozen bar patrons each grabbed a bottle of whiskey after crawling to the other side of the bar, and broke the ends to make jagged little daggers. Handlebar backed into a corner. "I'd clear away from the corporation, folks." Godwin lit another fuse and drew back on the crossbow. All of the living in the bar hastily complied. Handlebar, unfortunately, did not. Every time Godwin got a solid shot, Handlebar ran behind someone else. People screamed and scattered. The corporation followed. Godwin's aim was sure and true, but there was no way he could unleash the dynamite without hitting someone. "Oh well, Can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. He released the grip and let the stick of dynamite fly through the air. Godwin didn't feel guilty in the slightest. Folks didn't come to a place like No Name if they weren't guilty of something. When Handlebar realized Godwin wasn't going to stop for hostages, it bared its teeth and charged at Godwin. Which was exactly what Godwin had expected it to do. Probably. The stick rather handily blew the corporation to smithereens. A full charge would have slaughtered everyone in the room, but Jesu Christo had modified the charges with just enough punch to only kill a few. Most of the folk remaining in the bar were still staggering around, stunned from the assault on their senses, but they were waking up fast enough. And they were mad. Fighting mad, in fact. They knew that Godwin had risked their lives and they wanted his ass on a platter. Godwin slowly backed up, one eye looking inside of the main saloon. The saloon was small, but still pretty big for a town this size. It had at least 11 tables, and most of those had been full when he'd come to collect the proxy statement from these 4. No Name was a corporate town, and held onto the foolish belief that by avoiding a name, they could prevent power brokers like Holy Ghost from having any effect on them. That was utter bullshit, of course, but real players like Holy Ghost certainly weren't going to educate them. Godwin's arm was starting to get tired from holding the crossbow aloft. The mob in front of him had to number at least 50 and they were itching for a fight. A few even tossed their broken bottles at him, daring him to let the terrible new weapon go and kill living people instead of corporations. He nearly took them up on the offer. The earth shook as the quartet of armored Clydesdales slowly pulled the iron-plated stagecoach into view. About goddamn time. Godwin swore and backed up farther into the street. Jesu Christo wore a sombrero and a serape not at all typical of her native Gran Colombia, but what people expected from Mexicans. She whispered to the horse and nudged the reins forward. Atop the stagecoach was Holy Ghost, shirt torn off and his torso painted with unholy gibberish in phosphorescent paint. He was either black or native, depending on what he wanted to be on that particular day, and right now he was both. Hell, he scared Godwin a little. The coach's door swung open on its own, and Godwin pushed himself up into the air and inside using his good leg. He heard the door slam shut, immediately followed by loud curses and more bottles crashing against the edge. "Someone get the sheriff," cried out a voice in the crowd. Godwin stared at the plush oak ceiling of the coach and guessed it to be the piano player. Bold talk now that the threat was gone. Or leaving, anyway. Jesu Christo cracked the whip and the coach lurched forward, surprisingly smooth. The coach's suspension was anything if not perfect. Jesu Christo did excellent work, and Godwin was sure she was grinning underneath that bundle of scarves she used to keep her face hidden from the dust. He heard more sounds behind them as something crashed into the rear of the coach. Holy Ghost laughed but didn't say anything. It wasn't that Ghost couldn't talk, he just liked to use the silent native routine to get the locals to underestimate him. And he took his characters pretty seriously. It annoyed Godwin to no end when they were on their own, though. Soft. They were going soft. If you didn't kill enough people in this business, you lost face. Godwin wasn't going to let that happen. "You have the surprise ready, Jesu Christo?" he asked. He heard the shot from where he was inside of the coach. "I do." "That mob following us?" Godwin couldn't see anything through the tiny slit of the rear window. They needed a way to see out and still be safe. "They are, Chief." "How close are we to the wall?" "About 100 yards, but the gates are still closed." Godwin swore. The sheriff was legally obliged to let them leave. They hadn't broken any laws, but niceties like that didn't mean shit if the mob got them. "Do it." Jesu Christo gave a small dry cackle and lit up a firework. It shot up into the air, lighting the area with red light. They drove on until they stopped just in front of the gate. Nothing happened. "Where's the explosions, Jesus?" Jesu Christo's tone was resigned. "Local help. Not reliable." They waited for a few moments. They could hear the mob coming closer. Godwin kept looking at the wall, then crawled up into the main part of the coach and unstrapped all of the dynamite left on his vest. He looked at Jesu Christo and Holy Ghost. "Get all that we have left in the cart." They looked at each other nervously, and exited the coach. Ghost almost broke character to speak but thought better of it. He shook his head and opened the back of the stagecoach and gave 3 small bundles to Godwin. He looked at the pile and then at Jesu Christo. "It's not enough, is it?" Jesu Christo shook her head. They could see the swinging torches behind them. Godwin tried to think quickly. The mob was coming all right, just like they did for Shelley's Frankenstein. Godwin took the spare fuse off of his belt and looped it inside of the coach while Jesu Christo and Ghost put the dynamite back inside. It took only a few seconds. Ghost lit the fuse and kicked the coach back down the hill towards the mob. The stagecoach creaked right into the middle of the crowd, and then exploded. Its very tight, seamless construction caused the dynamite to concentrate and heat up, blowing the doors and rivets off with even more strength than it might have had if it had been shoddily constructed. Godwin used his good arm to throw a grappling hook over the edge of the wall, but it proved too high. He couldn't see what the damage was to the mob below them, but given the small lingering fires scattered around the area and the still glowing bits of iron that slowly melted and dripped onto the cobblestone street, it had been a lot. There had only been 1 rifle shot, but Godwin knew the federal garrison had at least 20 men. There could indeed be 10 men looking at him through spook sights. Better safe than sorry. He threw up his hands in surrender. Ghost and Jesu Christo did the same in short order.
Shut up! All of these products are available on Amazon.com and other marketplaces. Copyright 2015 Red Anvil Amalgamated. Initial bumper by Electro Rock Cardiogram. To fight the forces of evil!